Hello and welcome. I'm Quinn Walcott with the Summit Historical Society, and I'm excited to present our program, Early Days of Keystone with Rolf Dercum. As a member organization, we rely on your support through donations and membership. Please consider becoming a member today to support programs such as this. We would like to thank our donor who sponsored this program. Without further ado, Rolf Dercum.
I'm Rolf Dercum. Grown up in the county. Came here in 1942 as a two-month-old. And my parents came out from Pennsylvania, Max and Edna Dercum. And they were, especially my dad, Max, but my mom supported every one of his enthusiasms. And they wanted to find a place to ski. In the mountains, he thought the West was the place it should be. He was teaching forestry as an associate professor, I think, at Penn State. Had a group of young students of his who ended up in important positions or involved in the ski industry. And he just was in love with the mountains and came out here and bought a ranch, the old Black Ranch on Keystone on Montezuma Road, which is now Ski Tip, or they made it into Ski Tip Ranch. And he and my mom, Edna Dercum, were super enthusiastic about skiing out here and trying to make some sort of a living out of a ranch or whatever out here. But then the war came along, World War II, and so they spent the war years until 1945 out in the Pacific Northwest, where he was logging. He was older, and so he was in the logging industry. He wasn't involved in, didn't have to be part of the war effort. Well, it was part of the war effort, the logging industry was, but he was isolated, or whatever they said. You were into that, and you stay there. After that, they came back to the ranch they'd bought in 1942, and they started building, putting together the building that is now Ski Tip Lodge, which still includes an old stagecoach stop. Part of that building actually has the old stagecoach stop from the 1860s or something, when the only way into Summit County was over Argentine Pass, and that was one of the stops along the way where they had horses, changed the horses out. So then my mom were skiing up on a basin, on Loveland Pass, and looked back into what has become a basin. They were up there skiing. They met a couple of other skiers, enthusiasts, Larry Jump and Sandy Schaffler, and they thought that, this could be a good place to have a ski area over there in that basin, looking at from the top of Loveland Pass. And that's where a basin started. My dad bought some old mining property up there, and they were able to get a Forest Service permit. And in those days, the Forest Service didn't know much about ski areas, but thought it was not a bad idea. And they got a basin started slowly with a few early investors, and then he taught skiing up there. Both he and my mom taught skiing. My dad, Max Dercum, was one of the founders of the Professional Ski Instructors of America, the PSIA, and one of the earliest certified ski instructors, both of them in Colorado, or what was called the Southern Rocky Mountain Division. And gradually, they built Ski Tip up and started getting people to come and stay. Friends that were skiing at a basin, a few people, and who ended up helping them along the years to develop things and to keep Ski Tip going. And in the early days, there was the rancher down the bank, the Kremling Bank, Carl Breeze, who would loan to the local ranchers, but he somehow, my mom became county clerk, and so she met Carl, and he would loan money enough to get ski tip going every winter, and then they'd pay him back in the spring. And eventually, my dad kept looking up at Keystone Mountain, and he'd walked all over it, and he thought, this is a good mountain for a ski area, because he was a ski instructor, and he looked at things that might be where people could learn to ski and be caught up in this enthusiasm of skiing, because there weren't a lot of people in those days. So a few people went through to Aspen. Aspen was getting started slowly. There was, of course, Winter Park and Loveland Ski Area. Loveland Ski Area was started before Ski Basin. It was actually the only ski area right in that area for a while, on that side of Loveland Pass and this whole area. But so Keystone grew out of his looking at the mountain, walking all over it, and he built a model, a scale model, and it was complete, probably about 3 feet high and absolutely to scale, and in which he marked out trails on what he thought the terrain should be, where it should be. And we got interested in it about mid-'60s, late 60s probably, trying to get together some money and to get people to maybe get enthusiastic about a new ski area. Vail had started in the early 60s, and Breckenridge was starting up, and we were trying to find somebody to invest in it. We went around. We did get sort of a permit from the Forest Service, and that helped a little bit. But finally, one of the guests, who and his family stayed at Ski Tip, Bill Bergman and Jane Bergman, and their children, Bill Jr. Anyway, Bill was one night talking to my dad, looking at the model, and said, well, how's this going? And he said, well, we're not finding too much enthusiasm for people putting money into ski areas right now, because ski areas are a big deal. And he said, Bill Bergman said, I can put this together. And he did. He put together the corporate operation. He brought in a number of investors. We at Ski Tip put in land, which is partly now down in River Run area, as early investment. And then he brought in Bill, who had worked with Ralston Purina on a number of things, brought Ralston Purina in. He brought out Mel Bali, who was assistant to the chairman, Haldane, and we sort of showed Mel that we could ski and taught him a little bit about it, and he got very enthusiastic. And they put money in. They put in the other half of the amount that it took to get the early part of the ski area started. And both of them came out, and Haldane would hang out in my ski school because there were all the instructors there, and they were a lot of fun talking to them. And but it was just fun. Old days, let's have some fun. But the first year at Keystone, the early part, designed the mountain. My dad walked the whole mountain, laying out the trails that he put a center line flagging, and then he and I would go down. He'd be on one side, and we'd keep in contact, talking back and forth, and we'd lay out the trails by flagging where the trail should be cut. And then a group of, from Canada, or a group of loggers came in that were very good at cutting. I think they might have ended up as Asplin now, I'm not sure. But anyway, they cut the trails, and all the logs were saved. Everything was just either skidded with a horse, or nothing was dozed or pulled out hard to do much damage onto the ground. We didn't want to change the terrain. And they cut cut the trails in the summer, and they built, and then we built the lifts with helicopters that flew the towers in for the first lift that came out of where the mountain house is now, and the mountain house was being built. And that was sort of a tragedy, a sad, very tragic story, that as the mountain house was being built in that fall, there was a gas leak in the furnace area, and the architect and the contractor were both in there, and the place blew up, and it killed both of them. And that was almost the stop to the whole thing. Everybody was really shocked. It was very hard to continue, but we felt we had to. The building, it was one of those things that you just have to keep going.
Right.
And strangely, because you're not sure why, but you put so much effort in everybody, and there was a lot of effort and a lot of people involved at that time. By then, there was a general manager, Clay Simon, who I think come out of Vail, an old friend who I just talked to a couple of weeks or a month ago. He lives in Hood River, Oregon now, and he and his family were there, and their young children and my young children were about all the same age. And so it was a lot of family gathering and family doing things, and all the other people involved in the creation of the mountain. So the area was opened in 1970. The ski area, the lifts started up, the trails had been cut. We were a little worried about whether we're going to have enough snow. For some strange reason, it was sort of like this year. Here, there wasn't a lot of snow, and but we had enough to get going and get it working. and so we had it opened, and it was actually skiable, and there were a few people that would come up, maybe 100 or 200, but it was thought of as sort of, in those days, skiing was this family thing. Nobody, it wasn't a big commercial endeavor. It was not thought of, you brought in millions or thousands of people or lots of money. It was just enough to keep the lifts running. And that was what ski areas usually were. That was a basin in the early days, even Vail. It was pretty much just keeping the lifts running, enough skiers to come. Bill was very good at making sure that the people that did come were treated very nicely and were treated not like the old thing, oh, you're just here to ski and the rest of us are important. We became much more conscious of how you'd have to run an operation to make people really enjoy it. And yet it was a very interesting time because it did change. All of a sudden, skiing, probably in about 5-10 years, changed from just families or local or small community influence or people out of Denver coming up to much bigger much bigger than what it is now. Down the road after the beginning of Keystone, we looked at things and said, you know what? They have snowmaking back east. And I think the ski industry, and it was starting to grow enough, that have to have snowmaking. You have to have a base that is there. You can't just have rocks and hope that you get enough snow to cover some of those rocks. You have to have enough terrain. And the terrain has to, and I think that was the other part of it. The terrain for skiing became the trails like my dad laid out, things they did at Vail, to make skiing something that the intermediate skier, developing skier, could grow up on or get better at. And then as the skiers, you needed the black diamonds and the bumps and things like that, but most of the skiers didn't ski on that sort of terrain. So you needed terrain that a lot of the skiers could feel comfortable on. And I think that was a big part of it, plus having nice lodging. They built the mountain house at the base, whatever it was called at the top of the mountain. T-top was very nice, warm, cozy, nice fireplaces. You go in, good food, bar, and that opened up, I think, a lot of experience for people in skiing. It wasn't just the old, cold little chalet or the little, the early day restaurants weren't restaurants. They were pretty crude. I remember a basin early days as a kid growing up. There was one little restaurant that actually my grandfather designed the little building. He was an architect, and they used the lumber that they cut off the trails at A Basin to build this little chalet at the bottom, and then a little tiny chalet where Black Mountain is midway of A Basin now. And they were sort of crude, easily, not great food. And the ski school, I hired very interesting people. The first had to have, I thought, well, I don't know how many instructors we'll have to have, but I need some full-time instructors. And in those days, I hired 3 or 4 guys as full-time instructors. One of them, Rod Carney, is still teaching at Snowmass in his 70s, 80s, and was eventually, he and I were both certification examiners and things for the Rocky Mountain Division at that time. But I hired this guy, Jim Bowden, who people probably know in this county, but he was a very good skier and a very qualified ski instructor, but he'd been a linebacker for, I think, the Patriots. And eventually they were so against his skiing there that he quit being a Patriot. But he was an amazing instructor and a very funny person. He probably, if anybody knows him, you know. And one day I saw him out in the parking lot with his class, and he had these guys, these men, and he was walking around the parking lot saying, "Okay, these are your feet. This is what you do. This is what you do." And I thought, what are you doing in the parking lot? He was just giving them a basic body sense, how their bodies would work and how to feel their feet and how they needed to move. And he was the kind of person, we were all standing around at one of the lifts, the base of the lift, talking, a bunch of us. And Jim, all of a sudden, did a backflip, complete backflip, and landed on his feet in ski boots. He was one of the most amazing athletes, and a lot of fun. And he would take his students out, and they'd be going down the mountain. You'd see them, arms out, big, flying like a bird. He was a wonderful instructor and a great funny person. And then there was Ina and teaching the women who we had some of the very basic who could teach the beginning teachers or beginning students, skiers, and that was over on the little practice slope there at the mountain house. And they were incredibly good at creating new skiers. The guys were sort of, oh no, I wanted to, take somebody out and show them what a good skier I am. But in the early days, my mom was taught and was very. I learned from her that you have to really teach beginners by making them feel comfortable and safe. And one of the things my dad did on that little practice slope there at the mountain house, he built a terrain garden, whereas the skiers, one, you could learn how to ride the lift because there's a little short lift. Person learning how to get on a lift and not be afraid of a chairlift, and then get off. And then as they progressed, they could ski through this little moguli thing, sort of like, but it was a train garden, he called it, where you could follow the terrain of the hill going down and learn how to ski over bumps and how to follow the terrain of the mountain on a very comfortable area, where you don't, because a lot of the beginning skiers, the first thought was, I'm going to just shoot off this mountain. So you wanted to have it where they felt safe. They wouldn't go tearing off the side of the mountain. And so teaching skiing that way was an important part of the process of bringing people into the ski industry. And that was one of the things that when my dad was one of the founders, the seven guys that founded the Professional Ski Instructors of America. That was their whole push, that we want, because we were certifying instructors in divisions, small areas, like, New Mexico, Colorado, would certify a group of, I think it was called the Southern Rocky Mountain Division or something like that. Then, with the Professional Ski Instructors of America, the PSIA, you created another area, a way that you were bringing in ski instructors into a large national way of teaching, because it was before it was just each little division or each little ski school taught their own little way. But then we started to borrow information from the Europeans, the French, and I went over to France to be certified over there, which I tore my knee up and couldn't do. But Rod Carney was certified over there, and we had a couple of other internationally certified instructors at that time, coming into the ski industry to teach and to bring people into the industry, into the skiing experience. Once they retired from Keystone, I think my dad at 75, I don't know, they went off to Europe in the veterans circuits, and there was international veterans racing. There was there was vet racing in this country, starting at Class 1, which I think was in your 20s, and up into your 70s or so. And my parents went over to Europe a number of years, and raced over in Austria and in Switzerland and in Spain, or northern Spain. They had a wonderful time. Of course, in their age class, there were probably only one or two of them, so they'd always win some big trophy or something. And coaching, that was the other thing. At Keystone, we started a program for all the local kids, the school called the Mogul Mice, and there was some really good young ski racers. The whole idea of skiing and what Ski Tip was all about early on, it was not a business. It was just it was an enthusiastic thing. We're all into skiing, and yeah, you guys want to stay here? Sure, pay us for, a couple of bucks for a bunk bed, and then gradually built some rooms. And then dining room, we had finally, my mom said, I've got to hire a cook because I can't make dinners. We did dinners and breakfast.
Oh, wow.
But usually there were only about 14, 15 guests at a time. But there were some very interesting people that came and Ski Tip and stayed. Well, Henry Fonda. Yep, he actually stayed there several times. He showed up with he had a cousin in Denver called Dow Fonda, and they came up in the sort of a fall day and drove into the parking lot. And my mom and Judy was pregnant. My mom had her hair in curlers and whatever, and they walked out saw this car come out, and this guys get out, and it's Henry Fonda. And he said Dow Fonda heard that he liked the idea of Ski Tip, actually, and they wanted to ride horses. We did have some horses in the summertime by that time. And so we did have a few guests in summer, and it wasn't just winter. And so they came back and they stayed, and they actually were there when my first daughter was born, and sort of christened her in front of the fireplace. And he stayed. They stayed there, I think, several times. I know there's a picture at Ski Tip of them sitting out on the terrace, and he and my dad would go out. He didn't like riding, actually. My dad would go out in the Jeep because, I'll show you this whole. My dad driving around the Jeep was great fun. So he and Henry would go out, and drive around, look at all the old mines. Probably bored him to death. So guests that would come year after year after year, and sometimes their kids would grow up almost, and we had several their kids ended up working at Ski Tip, running as dishwashers or making beds and serving tables. We had one time, there was in the early days Ski Tip, people that would come year after year from Chicago, and they all knew each other, and they would gather there, sort of. And so somehow in Chicago, at the newspaper, they heard about these people going out, and so they sent this reporter out to Ski Tip. And this reporter came, and all of the guests that were there, who knew each other and all from Chicago, said, "Uh-oh, you know what's going to happen here." So they said, we'll go sit in front of the fireplace in our long johns and look all grubby and they all hung out there. And the reporter was, "Well, these people who are in society in Chicago, what in the world are they doing?" They just hang out in their old long johns. But they had a lot of fun. It really was, and that that's like when Bill Bergman and a whole number of other the Woods is from Iowa up there, and their family, they bought property. The Paulsons bought Hank Paulson, who was Secretary of the Treasury and head of Goldman Sachs for a while, old friend. They would come out. He was younger than I am. So his parents, his mother just died at 98. Mariana Paulson, but they built a house out there in that area that now sort of the Alders and Dercum Dash or whatever that whole thing is. They built a house out there. The Woodses built a house right down where River Run is. It's still there, a little cabin. It was a sauna, and they still can go there. It's right by the chairlift, just past the bridge over from the gondola. And they were all very enthusiastic, and they would come year after year after year. The Woodses came out of, and like Bill Bergman, they came out of Iowa. But a lot of people came out of Chicago, Iowa, and that was pretty much of the Midwest. It was just fun. It was just, it wasn't this business thing. It was just, all these friends are coming back. And often they would help my parents financially if they needed a loan sometime. And that was how a lot of, Ski Tip could add a little more, add a new room, put in better bathrooms. And Alf, my brother-in-law, he and I added more. We added an annex onto the lodge, and part of where the dining room is now, we built that. But early days, my dad did all the log work himself. My mom chinked all in the living room. When you go into Ski Tip, there's the logs all there, were hewn or rounded and then chinked, which you had to plaster in between the logs that are laid up, and they did this themselves. And he built the fireplaces. As you walk in the Ski Tip, the first big fireplace in that first room, that was the first part of the lodge, and then then there was an area that actually still there. You can, if you walk in, just as you walk in the door to the lodge and turn right, and go into what is just before the dining room. It's a little part of the dining room, I guess. But if you look at the logs, those logs were all hand-hewn by Swede loggers who were down at Keystone. They were all from Sweden, and there were a few of them left. Probably had come very young somehow. They were still left there in the 50s. And they hewed those logs and taught my dad how to hand hew logs, so in the bar, the Rathskeller area, those hewed logs, posts and stuff, my dad did. But these old Swedes, hewed these made so it's beautiful woodwork on those logs. People go in the ski tip, and you should go look at that. And these old characters, they were very funny. Some of them ended up years later. Finally, their last few years, they'd hang out at the Lucky Horseshoe in Dillon, in the old town of Dillon. And every once in a while, we'd go down there because if my mom had to, if it was a cook's night off, she'd take all the guests to the Lucky Horseshoe for dinner. The cooks were a lot of the ranch. They were very. These ladies taught my mom how to run a kitchen, and eventually Judy, they taught her. But and then Judy and I, took it over eventually and ran it. Our kids grew up there. Our first daughter, would go sit at the bar and ask for a green drink, and the sparkly little. They put a little fizzy thing in, and she sat in the bar there area there. And the bartenders were either myself or a cousin of mine. Oh, it was very exciting early on because I knew nothing. It was this whole new. I'd been in the ski industry, A-Basin, and teaching skiing and stuff like that, but ski racing. But it was very exciting to have this whole new thing. That a new area, new lifts, new trails, everything there, new operation, new buildings. It was very fun, and it was very intriguing to meet the people that were all engaged in it and became good friends, lifetime friends, a lot of them. But, and it was a new experience again, because the old idea was ski areas were just sort of, they grew up slowly and they were for the locals and mostly, essentially, for all the people that worked there. And ski area was for all of us. And we had to learn that ski area was for other people, but we enjoyed having the guests and the whole new experience of running a bigger operation. And most ski areas were very small, and of course it wasn't that big in the first years or two, but it still was pretty big. It had nice buildings and very good lifts and good trail maintenance and getting to know all the people that were involved. Ski instructors, ski patrol, mountain operation. Those guys are old friends. I also learned from, you have to have some organization. These people have to know what they're doing. And they were very professional. And that was the other part of it. And skiing, the whole thing became much more professional.